A single 4-square-foot garden bed. 45 minutes to build. 8 minutes a day to maintain after the first season. And over the course of one growing year, Japanese market gardeners have been pulling roughly 100 pounds of fresh vegetables out of that space without buying a single bag of fertilizer. The method that makes those numbers work has been running for centuries, but almost nobody in the Western gardening world uses it. And the reason comes down to one bad assumption baked into every seed packet you have ever read. That assumption is spacing, and once you see why it is wrong, your entire relationship with a small garden changes. I want to walk you through exactly how this system works, how to build one from scratch in about 45 minutes, and why, after the first season, it runs on less daily effort than it takes to brew a pot of coffee. But first, you need to see the problem clearly, because the problem is not your soil, it is not your climate, and it is definitely not the size of your yard. Here is the frustration you already know. You prepped the raised bed in spring. You followed the seed packet spacing, watered consistently, and by midsummer, you got vegetables, just not enough of them. A handful of tomatoes, a short window of beans, lettuce that bolted before you harvested half of it. So you did what every gardening forum tells you to do. You added a second bed. You spent the weekend building it, filled it with $90 of amended soil mix, and your harvest improved. But not by double. You doubled the space and got maybe 40% more food. The math never balanced. And the hours you spent weeding, soil watering, and amending expanded faster than the yield did. The reason the math never works is that backyard gardening inherited a logic that was never designed for backyards. Row crop farming was built around tractors, mechanical planters, and monoculture fields that need wide lanes driven through in straight lines. That logic demands heavy spacing so equipment can pass between rows. It demands single-species plantings so harvest can be mechanized. It demands seasonal rotation at the field scale, which leaves huge sections of soil sitting empty for months between planting windows. None of that makes sense in a 4-foot bed next to your back porch, but seed packets still teach it as the default, and gardening advice still reinforces it season after season. So what does a conventional small bed actually use? 6 inches of root depth, the 1 flat canopy layer, and 1 planting window per crop cycle. When that crop finishes, the bed sits bare until you start the next one. You extracted 1 harvest from 1 layer of space across 1 slice of time. That is a linear system, and linear systems give you linear returns. You get out roughly what you put in, minus losses to pests, bolting, and the dead weeks on either end of the season. And the advice that tries to fix this just doubles down. More amendments to push the same single crop harder. Wider spacing to reduce disease pressure in the monoculture. Succession planting within the same species. Lettuce after lettuce, bean after bean, which helps at the margins, but does not change the fundamental architecture. You are still farming 1 dimension of a 3-dimensional space. But Japanese market gardeners were forced into a completely different question. Land scarcity in Japan meant there was no option to just add another bed. So instead of asking how much space do I have, they asked how many productive relationships can I stack inside the space I already have. And that question built a system that produces 8 to 12 times more food per square foot than a Western row garden on the same footprint. Not because of a secret seed variety or a proprietary soil blend, because the system works in 3 dimensions at once, while a row garden works in 1. The gap between 10 pounds per season and 100 pounds per season from the same 4 square feet is entirely structural. And the structure comes down to 3 layers that conventional gardening ignores. The first layer is soil depth. Your raised bed probably cultivates 6 inches down, maybe 8 if you double dug it once and never repeated the effort. A Japanese intensive bed goes to 24 inches. That triples the root zone underneath the same surface area. And a deeper root zone means plants that would normally compete for nutrients can coexist because they are feeding at completely different levels underground. Carrots and daikon radishes tap down 12 to 18 inches below the soil line. Lettuce and basil pull from the top 4 to 6 inches. In a shallow bed, they choke each other out. In a deep bed, they produce 2 separate harvests from 1 square foot of surface without ever crossing paths. but the depth layer is only the floor. The second layer is vertical canopy, and this is where the yield starts to multiply. Japanese intensive beds do not plant on a flat plane. They plant in tiers, the same way a forest grows in layers from the canopy down to the forest floor. Pole beans or indeterminate tomatoes trained up a simple trellis along the back edge of the bed occupy 6 feet of airspace overhead. Mid-height crops like chard, peppers, and bush basil fill the middle zone beneath them. Ground-hugging plants like strawberry runners, creeping thyme, and low-leaf lettuce cover the soil surface beneath everything else, suppressing weeds while they produce their own harvest. 3 canopy tiers from 1 4-square-foot footprint, each one intercepting sunlight at a different angle. The tomato canopy filters light down to the chard. The chard filters it further down to the ground cover. You are not splitting the light between competing plants. You are stacking the photosynthesis, so each layer uses what the layer above let through. 3 harvests pulling from a single patch of earth and a single column of sunlight. Now here is where the system starts compounding. The third layer is time, and it accounts for more of the yield gap than depth and canopy combined. A conventional bed plants a crop, harvests it, and goes empty while you start the next succession somewhere else. That empty period is dead productivity. Every week the bed sits bare is a week of sunlight, water, and soil biology going unused. A Japanese intensive bed is never empty. The radishes finish at day 28, and carrot seeds go into that exact slot by day 30. The first lettuce bolts at day 60, and chard transplants fill the gap by day 62. You are not waiting for one crop to end and another to begin. They overlap. Nosh they hand off. The bed cycles through 3 to 4 complete crop turnovers in a single growing season. That means the effective productive area is not 4 square feet. It is 4 square feet running 4 rotations, which equals the output of 16 square feet of conventional single-season planting. No additional space required. No additional bed. Just timing. And then the companion relationships close the loop on fertility. This is the part that eliminates your fertilizer bill entirely. And it is the part that sounds like folklore until you understand the mechanism. Nitrogen-fixing legumes like pole beans planted alongside heavy-feeding tomatoes and brassicas pull atmospheric nitrogen and deposit it into the root zone through specialized bacteria living on their roots. The neighboring plant draws on that nitrogen directly through the soil, and no bag of synthetic fertilizer required. The beans are manufacturing the exact nutrient the tomatoes need, and they are doing it for free in the same square foot all season long. Meanwhile, aromatic companions planted at the bed corners handle the pest pressure. Basil on the southeast side, a single marigold on the southwest, dill self-seeding along the back. These are not decorative. They disrupt the host-finding behavior of common pest insects that navigate by scent and color cues. The basil does not repel aphids through some mystical force. It masks the chemical signature the aphids follow to locate your tomato leaves. The marigold roots release compounds into the soil that deter root knot nematodes. Measurable pest reduction shows up within 2 to 3 weeks of those aromatics establishing. You are not spraying anything. You are not buying pesticide. The garden's own biology is running the defense. So what does the actual build look like? You can have this running in under an hour, and the materials are cheaper than one trip to the garden center. Dig out your existing 4-square-foot bed area to 12 inches deep. Set the excavated soil aside on a tarp. Lay a flat sheet of cardboard against the subsoil at the bottom to block perennial weed roots from pushing through. Overlap the edges so there are no gaps. Then fill back with layers. 12 inches of finished compost at the base, dark, crumbly. No recognizable food scraps remaining. 6 inches of topsoil in the middle, either the soil you just dug out or bagged garden soil. 6 inches of aged manure mixed with shredded leaf mulch on top. Yeah, you want the top layer loose and fluffy because that is where your first seeds are going directly. Total material cost runs under $15 if you source the compost from a municipal yard waste facility and collected leaves in fall. Even if you buy bagged compost from a hardware store, you're looking at $25 to $30 for the entire bed. Total build time is about 45 minutes, and you do this once per bed. The soil biology handles everything from there. Next, install a simple vertical trellis along the north edge of the bed. You are putting it on the north side, so it does not shade the rest of the plants during the day. 4 bamboo stakes pushed into the soil, garden twine strung horizontally between them at 8-inch intervals, 10 minutes of work. Plant pole bean seeds 1 inch deep at 6-inch spacing along the base of that trellis. Direct seed a short row of radishes across the front zone. Transplant 2 lettuce starts into the middle section. Press 2 basil transplants into the southern corners and 1 marigold start into the southwest edge. Water the whole bed and walk away. Total planting time from empty bed to fully planted system is about 20 minutes. The succession cycle kicks off immediately. Radishes germinate in 4 days, tiny green shoots pushing through the mulch layer. Beans emerge in 7. The lettuce is already establishing. By day 14, the 3 canopy layers are becoming visible. The bean vines are reaching for the twine on the trellis. The basil is bushing out at the corners, and the bed is generating its own shade structure and microclimate. By day 28, the first radishes come out, bright red and full-sized, and carrot seeds drop into the vacated row the same afternoon. The cycle begins turning. Underground, earthworms are colonizing the compost layer. Mycorrhizal fungal networks are threading through the root systems of every plant in the bed. Bacterial decomposers are converting raw organic matter into plant-available nutrition without any intervention from you. The soil biology runs itself. Your job now is to water, check which crops are finishing, and slot the next succession in behind them. 8 minutes a day. By the end of year 1, the baseline output is established and the soil system is building momentum. You will have pulled lettuce, radishes, carrots, beans, tomatoes, and herbs from one small bed across 3 to 4 succession cycles. The soil is noticeably darker and looser than when you started. But year 2 is where the compounding hits, and this is the part that surprises people. The compost layer from the original build has been partially consumed and converted into stable humus by bacterial activity and earthworm digestion. Earthworm castings have deposited a dense layer of bioavailable nutrients throughout the root zone. Mycorrhizal fungal networks have colonized companion root systems and boosted their nutrient uptake by 20 to 30%. The same seeds in the same bed produce 15 to 20% more food than year 1 because the soil is doing more of the work. Your only amendment is a 2-inch top dressing of finished compost spread across the surface in early spring. That is 10 minutes of effort, once a year. By year 3, the fertility cycle is self-sustaining, and 2 seasons of bean roots fixing nitrogen have built a slow-release nitrogen reserve in the top 12 inches that feeds heavy croppers all season without a single application. The soil structure is loose, aerated, and alive with biological activity. You can push your hand into it up to the wrist without resistance. You are spending roughly $15 a year in materials, a bag of compost and replacement seed packets, and $0 on fertilizer, pesticide, or soil amendments. Compare that to the conventional small garden on the same footprint running $60 to $80 per season in purchased inputs and still producing thin yields from soil that depletes faster than you can amend it. The daily time commitment to maintain this bed across a full growing season is about 8 minutes. Watering, a quick check on which succession is finishing, and pulling anything that has completed its cycle and pressing the next round of seeds into the vacated row. Over a full season, that adds up to roughly 30 hours of total labor. The conventional gardener spending 2 hours per week weeding, amending, and troubleshooting a system designed for tractors logs closer to 60 hours for less than half the output. That time difference is the real savings, not just the $65 you stopped spending on fertilizer bags. The hundreds of hours you got back because you stopped managing a system that requires constant inputs and started managing one that generates its own. And if you have no ground-level bed at all, everything I just described works in containers on a balcony, a patio, or a fire escape. A 15-gallon fabric pot gives you the 24-inch root depth of the ground bed, not you fill it with the same layered mix. A vertical trellis zip-tied to a railing or leaned against a wall gives you the canopy layer. Succession planting runs identically in a container. radishes out by day 28, carrots in by day 30, lettuce swapped for chard. The cycle turning in 15 gallons of soil 6 stories above the street. That single container will outproduce a 40-square-foot flat-row garden at ground level because the container is working 3 dimensions and the row garden is working 1. Urban growers dealing with space or HOA restrictions can substitute a worm bin for the compost layer. Castings applied directly to the container deliver higher nutrient density per application than the manure amendment and take up less than 2 square feet of floor space. The shift that makes all of this stick long-term is measuring differently. Stop counting square feet. That metric belongs to the industrial model, and it is the wrong unit for intensive production. Start counting productive relationships. How many canopy layers are intercepting light simultaneously? How many succession windows are open at once? How many plants are feeding each other underground instead of fighting for the same 6 inches of root zone? When you measure in relationships, a 4-square-foot bed stops looking small. It looks like a system with 12 times the productive surface of a conventional bed, the same size. The difference between a garden that feeds your salad bowl and one that feeds your family is not the number of beds you own. It is the number of productive dimensions running inside the beds you already have. Depth, canopy, time, and biology. Stack all 4. And 4 square feet does what 50 square feet cannot. If you want to see the companion planting combinations that produce the highest yields per square foot, I break down the full list in the video on screen right now. And subscribe so you catch next week's breakdown on the 5 succession timing sequences that keep a single bed producing from last frost through first freeze. I will see you in that one.